Chapter 1. The Foundling. The year was 2284, and humanity had firmly cemented its place among the stars. Though still considered a newcomer to the galaxy's stage, Earth had managed to become part of the Galactic Concord, a sprawling, uneasy alliance of interstellar species and civilizations. It was a time of both progress and division, where innovation coexisted with lawlessness in the far reaches of uncharted space. On the remote colony world of Borealis 7, a sparsely populated, forest-covered planet orbiting a distant sun, Ethan Grayson lived a quiet life. A former Terran Defense Corps soldier, Ethan had left the military after the traumatic losses of the Draconis Rebellion, a galactic conflict that had taken too much from him. For the past 5 years, he had lived alone in a modest cabin, spending his days repairing starships for the scattered settlers and traders who passed through the small colony. Ethan liked the simplicity of it all. There were no grand ambitions on Borealis 7, no galactic politics, no reminders of the wars he had fought. Life on the edge of civilization was quiet, predictable, just the way he wanted it. But fate had a way of disrupting even the most carefully crafted peace. A stormy night. The storm arrived without warning. The skies darkened unnaturally fast, and thunder rumbled across the horizon as Ethan finished up repairs on an old cargo freighter parked outside his workshop. The ship belonged to a trader named Merrick, a gruff but good-hearted Borean who paid in bartered supplies instead of credits. Ethan didn't mind. On Borealis 7, barter worked just as well as money. The rain began to pour as Ethan wiped the grease from his hands and secured the freighter's engine casing. That should hold for another cycle, he muttered to himself, his voice barely audible over the roar of the storm. Suddenly, a loud, distant bang echoed through the forest. Ethan paused, frowning. At first, he thought it might be thunder, but the sound was sharper, mechanical. A second bang followed, closer this time. Ethan's instincts, honed from years in the military, kicked in, something or someone had landed nearby. He grabbed a flashlight and his old plasma sidearm, tucking it into a holster on his hip. As the rain intensified, he pulled on his coat and headed into the woods, his boots crunching against the muddy ground. The forest was dense and dark, the trees swaying ominously in the wind. As he approached the source of the noise, he noticed a faint glow filtering through the trees. His pulse quickened. Moving cautiously, he pushed past the underbrush and stepped into a small clearing. The escape pod. There, half buried in the mud, was an escape pod. The pod was small, barely large enough to fit a single occupant. Its exterior was scorched and battered, likely from a crash landing. Steam hissed from its damaged hull, mixing with the rain to create a swirling mist. Ethan approached slowly, his flashlight illuminating the pod's markings. The alien symbols etched into its surface were unfamiliar to him, a language he didn't recognize. He crouched beside the pod, inspecting the hatch. The manual release lever was jammed, but Ethan's practiced hands made quick work of it. With a sharp hiss, the hatch opened, revealing the pod's occupant. Inside was a young alien girl, no older than 6 by human standards. Her skin was a pale lavender, and her hair a cascade of shimmering silver clung to her face. Her eyes, half open, glowed faintly in the dim light, their color shifting between shades of blue and violet. She was small and fragile, wrapped in what appeared to be a tattered emergency blanket. Ethan's breath caught. He had seen countless alien species during his time in the military, but none quite like her. Whoever she was clearly in bad shape. Cuts and bruises marred her skin, and her breathing was shallow. The girl stirred weakly, her eyes fluttering open as she looked up at him. For a moment, their gazes met, and Ethan saw something that sent a chill down his spine. Fear and something deeper, a kind of resignation, as if she had already accepted whatever fate awaited her. "It's okay," he said softly, his voice gentler than he expected. "I'm not going to hurt you." The girl didn't respond. Instead, her head lolled to the side, and she slipped into unconsciousness. Bringing her home, Ethan acted quickly. He lifted the girl out of the pod, surprised by how light she was, and wrapped her in his coat to shield her from the rain. As he carried her back through the forest, his mind raced with questions. Who was she? Where had she come from? And why had she been in that pod? Alone? Back at his cabin, Ethan laid the girl on the sofa and turned up the heat. He fetched his medical kit and began treating her injuries, cleaning the cuts and applying dermal patches to the worst of them. Her physiology was unfamiliar, but close enough to humanoid that he could make educated guesses. As he worked, he noticed something peculiar, a small, intricate pendant around her neck. It was made of a strange, iridescent metal and bore an intricate design, two interlocking crescents surrounding a glowing blue gem. It didn't look like an ordinary piece of jewelry. It looked important. Ethan carefully set it aside, making a mental note to examine it later. After an hour, the girl's breathing steadied, and her color improved. Ethan sat back, exhaustion beginning to creep in. He watched her for a long moment, wondering what he had just gotten himself into. Awakening. The girl woke in the early hours of the morning. Ethan was in the kitchen, brewing a cup of coffee, when he heard a soft rustling behind him. He turned to see the girl sitting up on the sofa, her wide, luminous eyes scanning the room. When she saw him, she froze, her small hands clutching the blanket around her. "Hey," he said gently, setting the mug down. "You're safe here." The girl didn't respond. She seemed wary, her gaze darting to the door and back to him. Ethan raised his hands in a placating gesture. "I'm not going to hurt you. I found you in the woods, in that escape pod. Do you remember?" After a long pause, the girl nodded hesitantly. Ethan crouched down to her level, keeping his movements slow. "My name's Ethan. What's yours?" The girl hesitated again before speaking, her voice soft and melodic. "Kaya." Ethan smiled. "Nice to meet you, Kaya. Can you tell me where you came from? What happened to you?" Kaya's expression darkened, and she shook her head. "Bad people," she whispered. They took my family. I ran." Ethan's stomach tightened. He didn't press her for more details. "Well, you're safe now. No one's going to hurt you here." Kaya looked at him for a moment, her fears slowly giving way to something else. Hope. She nodded again, her small frame relaxing slightly. A mystery unfolds. As the days passed, Kaya began to open up, though her answers were vague and often fragmented. Ethan learned that she had escaped from a ship, but she didn't know its name or where it was headed. She spoke of shadowy figures hunting her, though she couldn't explain why, and she seemed unusually protective of the pendant, clutching it tightly whenever Ethan mentioned it. What Ethan didn't realize was that Kaya's pendant was more than just a keepsake. It was a symbol of her true identity. Kaya was no ordinary orphan. She was the last surviving member of the House of Lara, the royal family of the Ilarian Dominion, a powerful empire that had been overthrown in a violent coup. The bad people Kaya had fled from were none other than the usurpers who had taken her throne. For now, Kaya's royal lineage remained a secret even to herself. But as word of an Ilarian survivor spread, forces far beyond Borealis, 7 would begin converging on Ethan's quiet corner of the galaxy. And when they arrived, they would bring chaos with them. Chapter 2: Shadows of the Past. The days after Kaya's arrival were anything but ordinary for Ethan Grayson. Borealis, 7, once a quiet haven of isolation, now felt charged with tension. The little alien girl, with her lavender skin and luminous eyes, had brought more than just mystery into his life. She had brought danger, and Ethan's instincts told him that trouble wasn't far behind. Kaya was adapting quickly to her new surroundings. Despite her initial wariness, she grew more comfortable around Ethan. She shadowed him as he worked on starship engines, asking endless questions about the tools and machinery. Ethan found her curiosity endearing, though he couldn't shake the feeling that Kaya was holding something back. Meanwhile, Kaya's pendant, a strange, glowing artifact, nagged at the edge of Ethan's thoughts. He hadn't mentioned it again since their first night, sensing that it was deeply important to her. But he couldn't ignore the possibility that it might hold answers to who or what Kaya truly was. A signal intercepted. One night, while Kaya slept, Ethan sat in his workshop tinkering with an old comm array. The device had come from a trader who couldn't pay for repairs and credits, and Ethan was hoping to salvage it for parts. As he worked, the array suddenly came to life, emitting a burst of static. Survivor confirmed. Last known location, Borealis, 7. All units converge. Ethan froze. The transmission was garbled, but the words were clear enough to send a chill down his spine. Survivor, Borealis, 7. Someone was looking for Kaya. He quickly shut off the comm array, his mind racing. Who had sent the signal? And how long would it take for them to arrive? Ethan glanced toward the small bedroom where Kaya slept. Whatever was coming, he knew he had to protect her. The stranger. The next morning, Ethan was working outside when a sleek, black starship descended from the sky, its engines humming with eerie precision. The ship landed in the clearing near his cabin, and a lone figure emerged. The man was tall and imposing, clad in dark armor that glinted under the sunlight. His face was obscured by a helmet, but his movements were precise and purposeful. Ethan stepped forward, his hand resting on the plasma sidearm holstered at his hip. "Can I help you?" he called out, his tone calm but wary. The man removed his helmet, revealing sharp, angular features and piercing green eyes. "I am Commander Valen Threx of the Ilarian Recovery Force," he said, his voice smooth and authoritative. "I've been tracking a very valuable asset. Word is, she might be here." Ethan's heart skipped a beat. "I don't know what you're talking about," he said evenly. Valen smiled coldly. "Don't play coy, human. A pod was detected landing in this sector, and the signal leads here. I only want what belongs to me." Ethan crossed his arms. "If you're looking for someone, you're out of luck. No one's come this way." Valen's smile faded. "I'd advise you not to lie to me. The consequences could be unpleasant." Ethan's jaw tightened. "I think it's time you left." For a long moment, Valen studied him, his expression unreadable. Finally, he replaced his helmet. "Very well," he said. "But know this, I always get what I'm after." As Valen returned to his ship, Ethan felt a knot of dread in his chest. The encounter had been a warning. Whoever Valen was, he wouldn't stop until he found Kaya. Kaya's revelation. That evening, Ethan sat Kaya down at the kitchen table. "Kaya," he began carefully, "I need you to tell me the truth. Who's looking for you? And why?" Kaya hesitated, her hands clutching her pendant. "I don't know everything," she admitted. "But my family was important. My father was a ruler, a king. When the bad people came, they hurt him, hurt everyone. I ran away, and they chased me." Ethan leaned forward. "Your family? What species were they?" "Ilarian," she whispered. "We are the House of Lara." The name hit Ethan like a thunderbolt. The House of Lara was legendary, known throughout the galaxy as the royal family of the Ilarian Dominion, a once powerful empire renowned for its advancements in technology and culture. But the Dominion had fallen years ago in a violent coup. If Kaya was truly a member of the Lara bloodline, she wasn't just a survivor, she was the rightful heir. Ethan sat back, his mind reeling. "Kaya, you're a princess." Kaya's eyes widened. "No, I don't want to be. I just want to be safe." Ethan sighed. "I understand. But there are people out there who want to use you, people like Valen." Kaya nodded slowly, tears brimming in her eyes. "What do we do?" Ethan reached across the table and placed a reassuring hand on hers. "We fight back." Preparing for battle. Ethan spent the next day preparing for the inevitable. He fortified the cabin, setting up traps and barricades around the perimeter. He repaired an old plasma turret he'd salvaged years ago and mounted it near the entrance. Kaya, though frightened, insisted on helping. Together, they turned the cabin into a makeshift fortress. Ethan also reached out to an old contact, Miratalis, a former smuggler turned information broker. Mira had connections across the galaxy, and if anyone could help them, it was her. When Myra's hologram flickered to life, her expression was one of surprise. "Ethan Grayson, I thought you'd gone off to die in peace." "Good to see you too, Mira," Ethan said dryly. "I need information. Fast." Mira arched an eyebrow. "About Ilarian politics. Specifically, the House of Lara." Myra's expression darkened. "That's dangerous territory, Ethan. The Ilarians have been in chaos since the coup, and anyone connected to the royal family is a walking target." "I figured," Ethan said, "but I've got a kid here, an Ilarian girl. She says she's the last of the Lara line." Myra's eyes widened. "You've got a princess in your cabin? Stars, Ethan. You really know how to pick your fights. Can you help us or not?" Ethan pressed. Mira sighed. "I'll see what I can find. But you need to lay low. If word gets out, half the galaxy will be after her." "Too late for that," Ethan muttered. The first attack. That night, Valen returned with reinforcements. A squad of armored mercenaries descended on the cabin, their weapons blazing. Ethan and Kaya fought back with everything they had, the traps and defenses holding the attackers at bay. Ethan's military training kicked in as he fired at the mercenaries with deadly precision. Kaya, though terrified, used her small size and agility to outmaneuver the enemy, distracting them long enough for Ethan to strike. The battle was fierce, but eventually, the mercenaries retreated, leaving the clearing littered with debris and scorch marks. As the dust settled, Ethan looked at Kaya, his heart pounding. "You okay?" he asked. Kaya nodded, her eyes wide but determined. "I'm not afraid anymore." Ethan smiled faintly. "Good. Because this was just the beginning." Chapter 3. Secrets of the Bloodline. The remnants of the battle lingered outside Ethan's cabin. Smoke curled into the twilight sky from the ruined equipment and scattered debris. Kaya sat quietly on the porch, staring into the forest with an expression far too heavy for a child. Ethan stepped out with 2 cups of warm tea and handed one to her, trying to hide the exhaustion on his face. "You did good today," he said softly, sitting beside her. Not many kids could have kept their head like that. Kaya glanced at him, her glowing violet eyes tinged with doubt. "They're coming back, aren't they?" Ethan nodded. "Yeah. They won't stop. That guy, Valen, he's dangerous, and he knows who you are." Kaya hesitated before pulling her pendant from beneath her shirt. The glowing gem reflected the fading sunlight. "This is why, isn't it? My pendant." Ethan frowned, taking a closer look at the intricate craftsmanship. The interlocking crescents and strange symbols pulsed faintly, as if alive. "Maybe," he said, "but it's more than that. It's who you are. This isn't just about a piece of jewelry." Kaya hugged her knees to her chest. "I didn't ask for any of this." "I know," Ethan said, placing a hand on her shoulder. "But running won't help anymore. We've got to face this together." Myra's revelation. Miratalis was good at what she did. In less than a day, the former smuggler sent Ethan an encrypted transmission with everything she could dig up on the House of Lara and its fall. Ethan played the message in his workshop while Kaya tinkered with a small engine in the corner. "All right, Ethan," Myra's holographic figure said, crossing her arms. "Here's what I've got." The House of Lara ruled the Alarian Dominion for over 2 centuries. They were known for their advanced biotech and psionic abilities, which made them powerful but also painted a big target on their backs. About 6 years ago, a coup led by a faction called the Orvaxis Syndicate toppled the Lara line. Most of the royal family was wiped out, but there were rumors that one heir escaped. Ethan glanced at Kaya, who was listening intently. "Go on." "Turns out those rumors weren't just rumors," Mira continued. "Kaya's pendant is a royal signet, coded to the Lara bloodline. It's not just a symbol, it's a key. The Alarian's most advanced tech requires a Lara heir to access it. The Syndicate's been hunting for her ever since, and now they know she's alive." Kaya's eyes widened. "I don't know anything about that. I don't even know how to use it." Mira shrugged. "Doesn't matter. To them, you're the key to reclaiming their lost tech and the throne." Ethan exhaled sharply. "And Valen? He's a hired gun for the Syndicate," Mira said. "One of their best. If he's after Kaya, they're getting desperate." "What do we do?" Kaya asked, her voice small. Mira leaned forward, her expression serious. "You've got 2 options. Run, though I don't recommend it, because they'll find you eventually. Or fight back. If you can reach one of the old Lara strongholds, you might be able to activate their tech and level the playing field." Ethan frowned. "A stronghold? Where?" Mira smirked. "Lucky for you, there's one right here in the Borealis system. An old research station hidden on Calitha's moon. If the signet works, you might find weapons or allies or both. But it's a long shot." "I'll take it," Ethan said without hesitation. Mira sighed. "Figures. You were always stubborn. I'll send you the coordinates. Good luck, Ethan, and try not to die." The journey to Calitha's moon. The trip to Calitha's moon wasn't easy. Ethan and Kaya loaded up his old starship, a battered but reliable SX-47 freighter affectionately nicknamed the Rust Bucket. They packed what supplies they could salvage, knowing the Syndicate wouldn't give them much time before launching another attack. As they left Borealis 7's atmosphere, Kaya stared out the viewport, her expression a mix of awe and anxiety. I've never been to space before. Ethan smiled faintly. It's not so bad. Just noisy, cold, and full of people trying to kill you. Kaya managed a small laugh. That's comforting. Their journey through the Borealis system was tense. Ethan plotted a route through the drift fields, a treacherous region of asteroid clusters and plasma storms that would obscure their trail. But even with the ship's stealth systems engaged, Ethan couldn't shake the feeling that they were being followed. He was right. Halfway through the drift fields, alarms blared across the cockpit. "Incoming ships," Kaya said, her voice rising with panic. Ethan cursed under his breath. "Syndicate scouts. They must have tracked us." A pair of sleek Syndicate interceptors appeared on the ship's sensors, their weapons already locking onto the freighter. "Hold on, kid," Ethan said, gripping the controls. "This might get rough." A desperate escape. The rust bucket wasn't built for combat, but Ethan knew how to handle her. He weaved through the asteroids with practiced precision, using the drifting rocks for cover as the Syndicate ships fired relentlessly. Kaya clung to her seat, her eyes wide as the ship shook with each near miss. "Can't you shoot back?" she shouted. "Not unless you want this thing to fall apart," Ethan replied, sweat beading on his brow. "She's got shields and speed, not guns." Kaya's pendant suddenly began to glow brighter, pulsing in time with the ship's movements. "Ethan," she said, her voice trembling, "I think the pendant is reacting to something." Ethan glanced at her, then back at the controls. "Great timing. Can you figure it out?" Kaya clutched the pendant, closing her eyes. To Ethan's astonishment, a soft hum filled the cabin, and the ship's sensors lit up with new readings. A hidden passage through the asteroid field appeared on the display, marked by glowing waypoints. "Follow the markers," Kaya said, her voice steady despite the chaos. Ethan didn't hesitate. He steered the ship through the marked path, dodging plasma fire and debris. The Syndicate ships struggled to keep up, their larger frames unable to navigate the narrow passage. Finally, the freighter emerged from the field, leaving the interceptors behind. Ethan let out a breath he hadn't realized he was holding. "Not bad, kid," he said, glancing at Kaya. She opened her eyes, her expression dazed. I don't know how I did that." "We'll figure it out later," Ethan said. "For now, let's find that stronghold." Calitha's Moon. Calitha's Moon was a desolate place, its surface covered in jagged rocks and sulfuric geysers. Ethan landed the freighter near a crumbling structure that matched Myra's description. The Lara research station was massive, its spires reaching toward the sky like skeletal fingers. As they stepped onto the moon's surface, Kaya's pendant began to glow brighter, guiding them toward the station's entrance. Inside, the air was stale and heavy, the walls covered in Alarian glyphs that pulsed faintly with light. "This place feels alive," Kaya whispered. Ethan nodded, his hand resting on his sidearm. "Stay close." As they ventured deeper into the station, the pendant led them to a central chamber filled with ancient machinery. At its center stood a pedestal, perfectly sized for the pendant. Kaya hesitated, then placed it into the slot. The room came to life. Lights flickered on, and holographic displays filled the air. A voice, smooth and melodic, echoed through the chamber. "Welcome, heir of Lara. The Dominion awaits your command." Kaya stared at the displays, her eyes wide with wonder. What does this mean?" Ethan placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "It means we just found our edge." But before they could celebrate, the sound of boots echoed down the corridor. Ethan turned, his heart sinking as Valen Threx stepped into the chamber, his weapon drawn. "You led me right to it," Valen said, his voice dripping with satisfaction. "And now it's mine." Chapter 4. The Legacy of Lara. The stronghold trembled as Kaya's pendant pulsed with energy, lighting up the darkened chamber. The Alarian glyphs carved into the ancient walls glowed brighter, casting the room in an otherworldly radiance. Ethan Grayson stood between Kaya and Valen Threx, his plasma pistol aimed at the armored Syndicate commander. Valen's enforcers fanned out behind him, their weapons trained on Ethan. Their heavy boots echoed against the metal floor, cutting through the mechanical hum of the stronghold as its systems continued to awaken. "Stand down, human," Valen said, his voice cold and unyielding. "You fought admirably, but you're outmatched. Give me the girl, and I might let you live." Ethan glanced at Kaya, who clutched the glowing pendant tightly against her chest. Her violet eyes were wide with fear but determined. She shook her head. Ethan smirked, his gaze never leaving Valen. You're not taking her. If you want her, you'll have to go through me. Valen's lips curled into a sneer. As you wish. The battle begins. Valen's hand shot up, signaling his enforcers to attack. Plasma bolts lit up the chamber as the Syndicate soldiers opened fire. Ethan dove behind a console, dragging Kaya with him. He returned fire, each shot precise, taking down 2 enforcers before they could close the gap. Kaya! Ethan shouted over the chaos. That pendant's connected to this place. Can you do something? Anything? I don't know how, she cried, her voice trembling. I don't even know what it's doing. Figure it out fast. Ethan growled, firing another shot that ricocheted off Valen's armor. Kaya closed her eyes, clutching the pendant with both hands. The energy pulsing from the pendant seemed to sync with the glyphs around the room. The stronghold trembled again, and the air filled with a low hum as the ancient systems came to life. The synthetic voice from before spoke, calm and measured. Royal bloodline confirmed. Activating defensive protocols. The stronghold awakens. Panels slid open along the walls, revealing automated turrets that swiveled into position. A flash of light shot across the chamber as the turrets opened fire on the Syndicate enforcers. Screams and the sound of shattering armor filled the air as the attackers scrambled for cover. Valen snarled, turning his attention to Kaya. She's controlling it, he shouted to his men. Take her down. 2 enforcers broke from their positions, charging toward the console where Kaya crouched. Ethan intercepted them, his plasma pistol blazing. He struck one enforcer with the butt of his weapon, knocking him unconscious, and shot the other in the leg, sending him sprawling. Valen growled in frustration. You're wasting time. He activated his energy blade, the crackling weapon emitting a faint blue glow. He moved toward Ethan with predatory precision. Ethan versus Valen. Ethan barely had time to react as Valen swung the energy blade toward him. He dodged, the blade slicing through the air where he'd been standing moments before. The heat from the weapon singed his jacket as he rolled to the side, coming up with his pistol aimed squarely at Valen. You're fast, Valen said, his tone almost impressed. But you're only delaying the inevitable. Ethan fired, but Valen deflected the shot with his blade, the plasma bolt ricocheting off into the ceiling. The two clashed again, Valen's blade sparking against Ethan's improvised counterattacks. Ethan fought with the ferocity of a man with everything to lose, but Valen's skill and strength were overwhelming. Kaya watched in horror as Ethan struggled. Her pendant pulsed faster, the glyphs around her glowing in response. Come on, she whispered, her hands trembling against the console. Please, help us. Kaya's power unleashed. The stronghold systems responded to her plea. The glyphs flared with light, and a deep hum resonated through the chamber. The synthetic voice returned, royal command confirmed. Activating energy field. A shimmering barrier of light enveloped the console, protecting Kaya from the onslaught of plasma bolts. The remaining Syndicate enforcers fired at the shield, but their shots were absorbed harmlessly. Kaya's fear gave way to determination. She placed her hands on the console, and the pendant's energy flowed into the machinery. Turrets, focus on the intruders, she commanded. The stronghold obeyed. The automated defenses intensified their fire, cutting down the remaining enforcers with ruthless precision. The chamber became a blinding display of light and energy as the Syndicate forces were overwhelmed. Valen turned to Kaya, his eyes blazing with fury. You think you've won? He snarled. This is just the beginning. The final stand. Ethan seized the moment, charging at Valen with everything he had. He tackled the commander, sending them both crashing to the ground. Valen's energy blade clattered across the floor as the two men grappled, trading brutal punches. Give it up. Ethan growled, pinning Valen's arm. You're done. Valen sneered, twisting free and delivering a sharp blow to Ethan's ribs. He reached for his blade, but before he could grab it, a turret swiveled toward him, its barrel glowing with energy. Kaya's voice rang out, clear and commanding. Stand down, Valen. Valen froze, his eyes narrowing as he looked at Kaya. For the first time, there was a flicker of doubt in his expression. You don't understand what you're meddling with, child. That pendant, that power, it will destroy you. Kaya stepped forward, her voice steady despite the tremor in her hands. Maybe, but it's mine to control, not yours. The turret fired, narrowly missing Valen's head, but close enough to send him scrambling backward. He glanced around, realizing he was alone and outmatched. With a final glare at Ethan and Kaya, he activated a device on his wrist and vanished in a flash of light. He's gone, Ethan said, breathing heavily as he staggered to his feet. For now. The legacy unveiled. The chamber quieted as the last of the stronghold's defenses powered down. Kaya removed the pendant from the console, and the holographic display shifted, revealing star maps and schematics for advanced technology. The synthetic voice spoke again. Ilarian network reactivated. Awaiting further instructions from the royal bloodline, Ethan placed a hand on Kaya's shoulder, his expression soft. You did it, kid. This place. It's yours. Kaya looked at the glowing maps, her eyes wide with wonder. What do we do now? Ethan smiled faintly. We figure out what this place can do. If the syndicate's so desperate to control it, maybe it's the key to stopping them. Kaya nodded, her resolve hardening. Then let's stop them. For my family. For everyone they've hurt. A new beginning. With the stronghold's resources at their disposal, Ethan and Kaya began planning their next move. The star maps pointed to other Ilarian outposts scattered across the galaxy, each one a potential source of allies and technology. But they knew the syndicate wouldn't give up easily. Valen would return, and the fight was far from over. As they prepared to leave, Kaya turned to Ethan. Thank you. For everything. I wouldn't be here without you. Ethan ruffled her silver hair, smiling. We're a team now, kid, and we've got a galaxy to save. Together, they boarded Ethan's ship and set course for the next outpost. The stars stretched out before them, filled with danger, mystery, and hope. The syndicate thought they could control the last heir of Lara, but they had underestimated the bond between a soldier and a lost princess. And that bond was unbreakable.